The legendary Pokemon Zacian has returned in Regulation G, and this was a massive threat in Sword and Shield's format with a near 70% usage rate in the final series of Sword and Shield. But it's back, and it got a massive nerf in Scarlet and Violet, and we need to talk about how this Pokemon is not necessarily as good as it once was. So the thing about Zacian, if you didn't know, in Sword and Shield that made it so incredibly popular was the fact that its Intrepid Sword ability, which was on switch in, this Pokemon's attack stat is raised by 1 stage, worked every single time that this Pokemon was rotated. So it didn't matter what came out on the field, what happened during those instances that this Pokemon had Intrepid Sword up. If you rotated it out and brought it back in, this Pokemon would once again get that +1 attack, and that was massive for this Pokemon's success, because things like Incineroar, which was also very popular with like a 74% usage rate in Sword and Shield, that was the best way to kind of keep Zacian in check, was to bring it in, intimidate, and then lower it back to neutral and keep it in line. With the nerf that was added in Scarlet and Violet, which is on switch in, this Pokemon's attack stat is raised by 1 stage, but this only activates once per battle. That really hinders what Zacian is capable of doing in the Scarlet and Violet metagame compared to what it could do in the Sword and Shield metagame. Now, as far as Zacian is concerned in the Regulation G format, I don't think it is as good as it will be later down the line. I think personally that Zacian is going to be a very solid Pokemon later down the line in a double restricted format, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. We need to talk about why this Pokemon is so hindered by this particular thing. So first and foremost, with it only activating once per battle, that really puts Zacian on the back foot against specifically Incineroar. Incineroar is going to just be an absolute issue for this Pokemon, and I honestly think that Landorus Therian is going to be a little bit better this format. So we're going to see these two Pokemon pop up a fair bit, and it's going to be an issue for Zacian. In the past, like I said, this would activate every single time you rotated. So if you came in and you got intimidated by Incineroar or Landorus Therian, you were able to just switch out and come right back in. You get that +1 back. But that's no longer the case, meaning that if you lead your Zacian and they lead Incineroar, you're automatically back to neutral, and there's no way of getting that Intrepid Sword bonus back, putting you at a serious disadvantage compared to where you were in the past. And this also allows Incineroar to go for Parting Shot and things of that nature to keep Zacian in check and keep it from being able to do big damage. And the same thing goes for Landorus, especially because Landorus is oftentimes running things like, you know, Stompy Tantrum, which is going to do super effective damage, and then U-Turn is very common on this Pokemon as well. So being able to just kind of keep cycling into that Zacian and keeping it in check really puts this on the back foot. Same goes for the Parting Shot on Incineroar. Just that rotational battle that you play with these two particular Intimidate setters is going to really hurt Zacian going into the Regulation G meta. And because you're only using one restricted Pokemon, it really hurts Zacian because people are prepping for that particular Pokemon. There's a lot of Incineroar running around. I think Incineroar is going to still be incredibly solid going into Regulation G, and this Pokemon is just going to keep causing problems for this. So with this only being the single restricted and this being your option, it kind of makes you double check yourself when team building and go, do I really want to bring Zacian as my one restricted Pokemon, or do I want to bring something else that can benefit more from, you know, running Clear Amulet? Like Groudon could run Clear Amulet, or Calyrex Ice Rider can run Clear Amulet and avoid these particular threats, right? And with that in mind, with that being the one option as far as bringing a particular Pokemon on a team, I'm personally going to lean more into these because of the fact that Zacian is locked into Rusted Sword to even get that ability to activate. That really hurts it in this case, because if Zacian could run a Clear Amulet, this would still be an S tier Pokemon without a doubt in my mind. I don't think it's bad. I don't want to say it's bad, but without the ability to run a different item and being forced to run Rusted Sword, it really hurts you into the Intimidate matchups that it used to be pretty decent into, because you could still in the past hit Incineroar with Sacred Sword, you could hit Lando with Behemoth Blade and do really big damage, but because of that once per battle activation, it just really hinders what this Pokemon used to be able to do. So ways around this that I could see happening if you wanted to run Zacian in Regulation G, I think there are a handful of options for dealing with this. The main one I think that we're going to see in the main alteration is, rather than run like Play Rough or something, you're probably going to see more Sword Stance pop up on Zacian. Running this next to an Incineroar of your own and having that be your lead. Even if they lead Incineroar, you're able to just fake out and go for a Swords Dance turn 1, and that's going to put you in a really strong position, giving you +2 after the Intimidate goes off, bringing you back to neutral. This Pokemon's still beefed up and ready to roll, and I think that's the best way to deal with this particular instance in Regulation G. Other ways that I think are going to be very popular are going to be Gouging Fire. Gouging Fire is going to be really nice in this regard, mainly because of the Howl. You could still run Booster Energy on this, and then be able to just go for Howls, outspeed stuff, get Zacian boosted up, and start doing big damage. And I think that's going to be a really powerful combination. On top of this, you can start breaking swiping stuff like Incineroar, like Landorus Therian. That's going to lower their attack stats, and that's going to make you able to survive more hits on your Zacian from Flare Blitz, from Stomping Tantrum, from things of that nature. So I think Gouging Fire is honestly one of the best teammates that you can have for Zacian at this time, just because of the fact, like I said, there's not another option as far as restricteds go, because you're locked into one with this format. I also think that Chien-Pao is going to be incredibly solid with this. Even with going back to neutral, Zacian has such a high natural attack stat that even if you get put back to neutral, you're going to be doing big damage next to a Chien-Pao and being able to do just a ton of work. And I think with the Swords Dance, this can be very powerful as well. If you're able to get that Swords Dance up with next to the Chien-Pao, you're going to be still putting out incredible amounts of damage for Zacian. And I think that these two Pokemon are something you're going to see pop up a lot on Zacian teams in Regulation G. But like I said, I don't think that Zacian is the call for Reg G. I think in double restricted formats, whenever we end up getting those, that is going to be the pristine time to run Zacian. And the reason for that is Zacian was very popular in double restricted formats in Sword and Shield. You're able to run it as that Pokemon that you'd basically throw Zacian on the team, throw another restricted Pokemon on a team, and you were cooking. You were set, right? And I think that that can replicate in this particular game. I think you are able to do that very well in their double restricted format, because rather than use Zacian as that early game sweeper, you lead it early, you get that Intrepid Sword boost, and you start taking KOs very early, you save it as an end game sweeper. So rather than having to run Swords Dance and worrying about that Incineroar, what you can do alternatively is run a more traditional moveset, maybe throw a quick attack on here instead, have that Intrepid Sword boost when you come in, and be able to do big damage at the end game scenario after you've already dealt with the Incineroar threat. So I could definitely see this being more popular on like Groudon teams in double restricted formats, being able to deal with Incineroar with Precipice Blades, or dealing with it with like maybe you're running Walking Wake on that team, or you know, things of that nature that are able to get rid of the Incineroar before you end up bringing Zacian in. I think that is going to be incredibly solid for Zacian in a double restricted format. I could also see this being run on Kyogre teams in double restricted formats. Kyogre being able to come in with Water Spout next to the Torn and being able to deal that big damage into Incineroars is going to be very powerful. And getting rid of that Incineroar in the early game with Kyogre and then bringing Zacian in the late game to clean up is going to be very, very popular. I think in the double restricted formats, I think that's where this Pokemon will once again thrive. I still don't know if that'll bring it up to an S tier, but I think that it is much better in the double restricted formats than it will be in the current format. Because like I said, when you're sitting there team building, you're going, which one legendary am I going to bring into this particular format? And you have to think about the fact that this Pokemon now gets pretty much dealt with easily by Incineroar. It just doesn't feel good to continue bringing this Pokemon over something like Calyrex Shadow Rider, Calyrex Ice Rider, or Groudon, or Koraidon, or something of that effect. So for me personally, with Zacian the way it is right now, I don't think that it's going to see a ton of play in Regulation G. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm very keen to see what other people have to say about this. But yeah, I just think that this is a huge nerf to this Pokemon, a much needed nerf, but a huge nerf, and it's going to really affect the amount that you see this Pokemon and how this Pokemon is going to be utilized on different teams. So those are my thoughts. That is it for the video. If you're not already sub for more videos like this in the future, also be sure to check out the Discord if you want to share Reg G teams that are featured on the channel. Check that out, but until next time, peace.